Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back. Yes, this is a tiny bit weird because Lexi and I literally just recorded another video. This is why I'm wearing the same clothes. I didn't, I didn't, and Lexi's icon still looks the same.
And yes, I'm still in my navy tunic. Sorry, guys.
I like the little, the GNG on your shirt, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we photoshopped that in.
This is really nice. So people, welcome. Today, Lexi and I have an epic topic. By the way, Lexi is girl next Gondor. I mean, you can read it there. If you can't, I just told you. And if you haven't subscribed to Lexi, Lexi has an amazing, epic YouTube channel, which I do think we do a similar thing because we put our little own funny notes and twist into Tolkien lore. Maybe you're even more sarcastic than I am.
I got
I
pretty
would
salty
say.
in the last one.
Yes. Yeah, but Lexi does epic lore videos about anything and everything Tolkien. So all her details in the description. But yeah, we're here today to talk. Surprise, not elves.
I know.
um,
Well, pretty close.
yeah, pretty close. Yes. Um, it was a hard decision not to talk about Feanor, but we made that decision, and today we want to talk about um the gods and the powers of Arda and of Tolkien's universe and world. And yeah, Lexi. So first of all, let's start with the beginning, the creation myth. When you first read that, how long did it take you to go through the
So
chapter?
yeah, I didn't. The Ainulindale itself, the actual just account of the creation
Yeah,
song.
yeah,
Um, I didn't have too much trouble with
yeah.
that. My sticking point was in the Silmarillion. What comes immediately after that is the
Yes, it's the worst.
Valaquenta, which
Yeah,
well, now in retrospect I really like it now because I can appreciate, I know who all these people are now, and I know
yeah,
why, I know the history of why there's like two separate chunks
yeah,
dealing with basically the same thing. But the Valaquenta basically summarizes the Ainulindale and then talks more about the Valar themselves and who they are.
hmm
But we've already kind of, learned a lot about them in the
hmm
Ainulindale, so it's kind of like just as the narrative's getting going and they all descend into the world and they're waiting
yeah.
for the elves and the men to show up, then we get this like basically appendix to the Ainulindale dropped. And I'm like, I was told there would be elves in this book. That's the only reason I'm reading.
Were they?
It's like, where are my elves? Um, Now, of course, like now I'm like, yes, tell me more about how Aule and Melkor are actually very similar
Yeah.
and all of that juicy stuff. And I need to know more about like our Anwe and Ilmaria dating. But
hmm And
but yeah, at the time
why
it
is
was
there
a
only
little.
one wedding, but they're all married? Like, why don't they
Yeah,
have children? And yeah, a lot
yeah,
of
yeah, well,
questions.
and yeah, weddings and marriage and children and sexy times. It's all very complicated when the Valar get involved. Um, But yes, at the time I was like, that was the thing. I liked the annual delay. I was,
Yes.
expecting a very high mythic, and I was kind of a
Yeah.
legends and myths and folklore geek anyway, so I
Yeah.
wasn't totally shocked by that. It
hmm
was jamming the brakes on in the Valaquenta that I was like,
Yeah.
but why?
I know. I know. I felt the same.
uh,
Yeah, so creation myth. And then, the world was created in a certain way. I don't want to dwell on that. I have a
no.
literal, I think, 2 hour long podcast episode with Carol on that one. You can find that on my channel. But I was in a way surprised. We know Tolkien is Christian, right? And he
Hmm.
was a devoted Christian. And there are, not in your face Christian motives like, C.S. Lewis and other writers of their time used. But it is very subtle, but there are Christian themes and topics. And that this is my feeling, but maybe just because I do love Greek mythology, I'm not as well read and versed and not into Norse mythology. I know,
Hmm.
like people unsubscribing now, probably. But I always felt and this is, I started literally in my head comparing, oh, so cool, so Aule is Hephaestus, and
Yeah.
that, like, all these little details. And obviously, Tolkien was influenced by that. So the whole concept of, so there is one god, Eru,
Mhm.
which, yeah, still Christian, right? And then there are the gods. So, this is a big shift and change from obviously Christian versus, pagan or whatever mythology. And then you also have the angels, which then, so you go down this ladder. This is how I see it. You go down this ladder, and then you have the angels, which connects you back, to God and the angels, and
Mhm.
Christian themes and topics. Um, do you like do you really do you like that concept of one god who then writes himself a bit out of history, and the Valar and then the
Yeah.
angels?
So, I mean, I kind of there's a few things to be said there. I think from a narrative perspective, I think Tolkien admits this a couple places, probably in the letters. I don't have the exact citation.
Hmm.
That for him, he wanted to make something that seemed, that gave him the logical sort of consistency that he found in monotheism. The idea that
Yeah.
there has to be some sort of something at the end of it all, some sort
Yeah.
of unifying
Hmm.
thing. But then also he really liked, we know he was started out as a classicist. His beloved mother taught him Greek when he was a
Yeah.
little boy. So this was
Yeah.
like, he
Yeah.
later moved into the more Norse stuff, which has a lot of overlap, I think, structurally,
Yeah.
with the way the Greek myths are structured as well.
Yeah.
And he wanted
Valhalla,
to
the Olymp.
have, yeah, there's there's this idea that the gods have a home. There's multiple gods. There's one who's like, and you see this, even
Yeah.
to the Celtic sort of tradition gets
Mhm.
co-opted by the Romans, who themselves are riffing on the Greeks. And then
Yeah.
there's, you can find similar themes in Egyptian, and it's all,
Hmm.
myths tend to have certain tropes.
Yeah.
Pantheons tend to have certain characters. You've usually got some sort of like paternal figure. You've got some sort of
Hmm.
like war versus love duality
Yeah.
thing. So I mean, he
And
wanted
they
to,
come. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No.
yeah, he
Hmm.
wanted to have his cake and eat it too. Basically, he wanted a world
Hmm.
that made sense to him from his perspectives, but he also wanted to lean into this idea of there's a god of this and there's a god of that, and there are
Yeah.
powers at work in the world that have this sort of mythical home that you can actually
Hmm.
visit on Earth. At least you could for a while.
Hmm.
And yeah, have his cake and eat it too. And I think the other thing too is that he is a Christian, which is a monotheistic faith, but he's also a Catholic, which is kind of a weird riff because there are a lot of there's a lot of intercessing going on in Catholicism.
Hmm. Yeah.
You've got the angels, obviously, and the Valar are frequently described as angelic. You've
Hmm.
got the whole kit and caboodle of saints. So
Hmm.
there is this hierarchical, even from his own religious faith, it has
Hmm.
that more of that hierarchical. You've got the one guy at top on top, and then below him you've got XYZ, and then under that you've got
Hmm.
Q, R, and S. You've got the
Hmm.
tiers basically. Even
Hmm.
from a religious perspective, that was a motif and a trope and a way of conceiving of things that he would have been familiar with.
Hmm. And I always thought of it because he went, he did weave in these Christian topics, and then when you talk about the Valar, obviously, you don't have, or if you compare them to the Greek, Roman gods, right? You have Melkor coming in. Melkor is a very Christian theme, the evil,
Yes.
because in Greek mythology, that you could say Hades, but Hades is not evil, right? He just fulfills his purpose. Even the Hekatonkeries, like all
Yeah.
these things,
There are
the
antagonists, but there's no one who's like evil.
exactly. Yes,
And
exactly.
then you
And
get a
even
little bit,
Loki, and
yeah,
yeah,
Loki's more of
Loki,
a
all these
trickster
things.
figure. Yeah.
Exactly. So you don't have this good versus evil fight. It's always like those gods, the not the Christian gods or the other gods he was influenced by. They don't have that Melkor concept, and I really like that he mixed up all these concepts and came to his ranking system and whatnot, and then the story unfolded from that. So that stood out to me right from the beginning, when I literally, I don't know, on my second read or whatever
Mm-hmm.
of the Silmarillion, when I started to really understand what is happening here, and not try to focus on all the F names and
Yeah,
just
you're
remember
not just
them.
drowning on names. And
Yeah,
of course, each character has multiple different names. And
yeah. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I really liked that, and I found that outstanding because he's mixing cultures, by whom he's influenced, and makes his own story of it. And I really like that he did weave in the concept of Melkor, because look, all the Greek stories, the Greek mythology, it's epic, it's awesome. I love to read these stories, but it's never really good versus evil, like Zeus
mm-hmm.
versus Prometheus and all that tells us a story. These people, humanity created, this is what you were saying before, we wanted to an explanation, even in the Bible, right? They wanted
Mm-hmm.
an explanation for the flooding, or why is it dry 8 months of the year and then there comes rain. Like, they wanted explanations for things that happened, right? This is partly why a lot of these gods, they try to explain it with that there is I don't know, Gaia or Demeter, and she is, now it's snowing, then Demeter wanted it to be sunny, and
Yeah.
so these things, they wanted explanations, and that makes a world real. And Tolkien had that same approach, and then he mixed up the topics. I really liked that, and I understood that pretty early on. I don't know if people even realize that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that it does is it allows for there to be explanations within Tolkien. So I've
Mhm.
been doing a lot of reading on like how destiny works and how prophecies work and
Mm.
how like,
Mhm.
coincidences, and Gandalf is like, "Oh, it's called a chance meeting, but was it really chance?" And the
Yeah.
Valar are kind of the ones who in a way are in charge of administering and implementing all of those little
Yeah.
accidents. So for example, like and this is, we see when they intervene more directly, it's more obvious, but like
Mhm.
Mithras is on the cliff and Fingon is like, "Hey Manwë, this kind of is lame,
Yeah.
maybe make something good happen out of this." And then that's when the eagle comes up
Yeah.
and intervenes. We
Yeah.
have Ulmo with his like watery dreaminess, and Ulmo and
Yeah.
Urmo team up. Ulmo and Urmo, that's a tongue twister. They team up and they bring prophetic dreams to people. And like
Yeah.
later Faramir has like a bunch of prophetic dreams that's like
Yeah.
that tend to involve water symbolism.
Mhm.
So you can see like it makes it more interesting to have those little accidents that we would attribute to chance or providence or randomness, like they're actually the result of an actual character who's in the world.
Yes, but is your conclusion, are these the Valar, or are the Valar the ones that just do what gods, like, is it?
I have not yet come to a definitive conclusion on that. I mean, I
Mm,
think it's clear that even the good unfallen Valar can make mistakes and they disagree with each other like all the
yeah,
time.
they do.
So, it's still, and it's
It's
very
a
much an open
dysfunctional
question.
family. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're asking Varda to help you, there's a question of whether she's going to, whether she should, and whether like she's going to be able to, because there are other
Yeah.
forces at work opposing her. So
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
makes it yes, the Valar are supposedly trying to implement the
Hmm.
will of Eru as closely as they possibly can, but they're
Yeah.
not perfectly omniscient divine. They don't know all the time what is going to happen, what is supposed to happen,
Hmm.
and what they should do about it. At least that's the
Hmm.
way they're portrayed. They're always portrayed as having these debates and these arguments, and I don't know,
Yes.
and well, he said this and he said that, and Mondos knows what's up, but he's not telling anybody because he's a jerk. That kind of a
Yeah.
thing. I love
Yeah.
Mondos, but I think that people get very frustrated with him because he's like, "Well, I know what's going to happen," and they're like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm not. I can't say. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm not going to tell you."
Yeah. But this level of this question we ask ourselves about the Valar, is that all them planning this? Is this all one step above
Mm-hmm.
this? Is this all gods plan, and they are just, the ones who handle and deal with it and give. Then, because then there are more sub levels, then the question is, are the Maiar, do they
Mm-hmm.
have a complete free will, or are they then just, the sub level below the Valar, who also, like,
Right, because
this is
the
like in a
Maiar are
company.
supposed to do the will of the Valar, so if you have a Maya
And they were
disobeying
instructed
his
by them.
Vala,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
or to what extent do they get their own, like, you can make the call, like Eonwë
Yeah.
and Sauron, and he's like, well, I mean, I'm the one kind of in charge, so I guess that we won't kill you, but this is
Yeah.
like the judgment that I will pass on you on behalf of Manwë. Was that a good call? Like, who knows?
Exactly. And then you even have some, like beings like the eagles. Do
Yeah.
they have a free will, or is that then, again, are they that just, they're fulfilling whatever their lord and master and, told them? Do they also have a free will? But oh God, let's not get into the free
Yeah,
will
let's
topic,
not.
because
Yeah, no.
but I think you
Yeah,
made a
definitely
video.
not.
You have a video series on that
I've
kind
been
of
doing
topic.
magic and I did
Yeah,
oaths, and the big
yeah.
part of oaths was
The
like,
old,
obviously
I
it
think I heard.
involves your
Yeah,
free will. And now I'm working on Turin right now, who is obviously just like the classic example of what's going on here. Is this his decision and its consequences, or is this like
yeah,
Morgoth controls everything he does, or could it be both? Like,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I
but
have my own opinion on that.
I know I have opinion. I've changed some of my opinions since I started getting into the question of like, well, what powers do the Valar have, and how do
Mm-hmm,
they operate in the world, and then
mm-hmm.
how does Morgoth operate differently, because he doesn't just like, he breaks the rules. So the
Yeah,
Valar, there's certain things that they just outright can't do, but there's also certain things that they won't do because they're not supposed to do. And of course, Morgoth is perfectly fine with doing, or at least attempting to do, all of those
mm-hmm,
things.
mm-hmm.
So the whole question of what is just like, what is impossible just by the nature of the way the
Yeah,
world is structured, versus what is not allowed or not in accordance with the plan, but Morgoth's going to do it anyway.
yeah, yeah. Because he's not working in the frame, Eru gave.
Well, he doesn't.
Um,
He thinks he's not. Eru would claim otherwise, but that's another like
yeah, yeah.
different deal.
So we have 14 Valar, most of them in couples, except the few loners, who are
Even the
very weird.
loners are kind of, they go in pairs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Umo and Melkor, they
Well,
don't have a.
if we count Melkor, then we have 15, don't
We
we?
have 15 with Melkor. Yes, exactly.
Yes. That's what
Um,
I thought you were gonna say.
mhm.
When you said 14, I was like, wow, she's excluding Melkor. I thought we were
Yeah.
bros. I thought were on the same side of this. I thought
Well,
we
he's our
considered
home.
him.
I mean, we love him.
We
So, oh
do.
God, there was one epic comment. We
I
sometimes
read that.
share
It was so
great
beautiful.
comments, and somebody called me out, that I'm a really bad person because I worship the baddies, Sauron and Melkor, and how could I? And they're like dictators in the world, and do I worship dictators and whatnot? And she can't watch my videos. Shout out to you.
Who
Um,
is not watching,
I
presumably.
hopefully not. I'll put a trigger warning in here. And I was like, I'm talking about a fantasy book. I'm like, whatever, people. Yeah, no, we love Melkor. So because
Yes.
my conclusion of all this will be, I find, because the thing is, at least the Greek gods, they were kind of interesting, and they did things, and they were way worse than the humans, right? So
Yes.
so this is not like, because this is a very different concept. He gave, us this concept of kind of, Greek mythology, North mythology gods, but then they are super boring, and they they don't do the cool things, like Zeus literally has 99 children with different
Yes.
women, cheating on his wife, and Hera wants to kill these children. Things are
Well, see,
going on there.
this is kind of the thing, narratively, that works, because Greek mythology, that's the point of it. It's
Yeah.
mostly about the gods as characters and their occasional interactions with the world of men. But you
Yes.
can't, as a mortal, you can't look at the Greek gods and look at what Zeus is doing and say like that's wrong or evil, because like that's not really a concept that applies. It's like, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter, morality doesn't really apply to them. They're just these raw forces or personification of forces that have just been unleashed on the world. It's like, it doesn't matter if you agree with it or not or think it's rude. Like, that's how it is. That's how Zeus is. He's gonna knock you up. Like,
Yeah, but they
yeah.
created the humans through, there were different ages, like the bronze humans. There were
Mm-hmm.
different ages of humanity, and but the thing is, they created them. Prometheus then even gave them the fire, and then all, like they created them. So the Valar concept is different. But let's go back to the
Right.
number. So
So back to
14
the
plus
yeah. Who
1.
who are these people?
Who are these people? So who are your favorite Valar? Let's say,
Oh,
because you said, oh yeah, I don't like this one, boring, blah. But who are your favorite, and why, and what did they do?
let's see. I am very fond of Manwë. I think in the similar way how we talked about how Finarfin is kind of the boring one of the Noldor.
Yeah.
I have an affection for Manwë, I guess I would say. And Tolkien himself points out that,
So you just
people's
go for the king. You just like because
no,
he's
I'm
powerful.
just saying that I feel bad for the guy is the thing. I think that
Oh,
he's in a very difficult position. So, he's supposedly he's the one that everyone looks to. He's the
yeah,
one that supposedly has the greatest understanding of the plan.
yeah,
And he's the one who's ultimately responsible for making the final decisions,
yeah.
but he doesn't always know, what to do. They
Mhm.
have the whole Baron and Luthien thing, and Mandos of all people like goes to Manwë and is like, I ain't,
Yeah,
I'm not participating in this. This is some BS. Like, these people should be happy and in love, and I'm deeply moved by this. And Manwë's like, all right, I'll get on the phone with Dad. And like, Manwë's the one who's like, okay, what do I do here? Like, clearly it seems very
yeah,
wrong to terminate this love story, but I got to figure it
yeah.
out. And then like
And even the doom of his brother, when his brother
yes,
is
and then
chained in
his
front.
this problem we have where the Manwë Melkor thing, where they are alike, they're kind of
Yeah.
sides of the same principle, and
Hmm.
and Melkor is the elder and the most powerful one, and he
Yeah.
was, in a perfect world, I think it's mentioned that Melkor was supposed to be the one, or could have been the one,
Yes.
rightfully in charge, but
Yeah.
it didn't happen that way. He
No.
turned on them all, and he lied to them, and he betrayed them, and he, just was mean for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And Manwë kind of has to, find a way to respond to that without falling
Yeah.
into the same trap.
Yeah.
So I feel for, and then, there's that scene where, the Noldor are leaving, and Feanor's just like flipping them all off as he goes, and the herald comes.
See?
He's like, he just does not care anymore. He's like, yes, forget you guys. Um,
Yeah.
so then
You're all the same.
the messenger returns and tells Manwë like, well, I told him what was gonna happen. He said he didn't care. He said we're gonna like go to our glorious like
Yeah.
tragic death, and it's gonna be freaking sick.
Awesome.
And and Manwë like bows his head and cries in front of
Yeah.
everyone, and then he
Yeah.
picks up his head and he's like, well, this is really like, this is gonna be really bad, really really bad, but you gotta
Yeah.
like. Manwë's even like, dear bot, will those songs be accounted and yet well bought, I think is the line, where he's
Yeah.
like, well, they're right, it is going to be really sick. None of them are going to be happy, but it's like going to be really really epic.
Yeah.
So Manwë is in this position where he has to watch the elves do really stupid things and like flip him off all the way back to Middle Earth, and he's just like, but I love you and I wanted to keep you safe, and now you're just like, I can't stop you because that would make me like a tyrant,
Yeah.
but this
But
is
the
going to
thing
be
is,
really painful to watch.
but the thing is, he would have actually helped them more if he would have acted with a strong hand. And this is what, because I'm not a big fan of the Valar, of
Mm-hmm.
not really, because I do think they are missing and lacking things. And if you act as a god or gods, because god is different, but as gods, right? Their duty was to take care of the world and to take care of humans, and to take care of something you must understand something, and then you can't play the game you've always played. You need to change and adapt to whoever your
Mm.
players are. And the Valar were never able to do that. They didn't adapt to, they sung the world into being and they thought, oh, it will always stay like this and it will always be nice and happy and easy. But then in came Melkor, right, and changed things. And they were never able to adapt with these changes and make accordingly different
Yeah.
rulings, right? It always was the same with them, and that is my
Well,
and
see, they do change. I don't think I don't know if you can argue
yeah,
that they made the right changes or right decisions or the wrong decisions. But the whole thing with the elves, they're waiting for the elves. The elves show up. The elves are
yeah,
supposed to be in Middle Earth with the Valar, but because of Melkor, who's still Melkor at this point, he's not Morgoth yet.
yeah.
That we know, he is, but they don't know that yet. They haven't named him that yet.
But they just didn't
Um,
want to help them. They also were greedy and wanted them to be with them. Yes, they wanted to help them to, escape Melkor and,
yeah.
certain death, but they
Well,
also wanted them to come to be with them.
and I think that the problem that comes up for the Valar again and again is this loss of faith.
Hmm.
They think that they have to do something
Hmm.
because they don't trust how things are going to turn out naturally.
Hmm.
And it's hard to argue that it's hard to compellingly argue that things would have been better if they didn't meddle. But like for example, we see Outlet. What's
Hmm.
his big sort of come to Eru moment is when he gets impatient of waiting for the children to arise naturally. They know
Hmm.
that these things are coming that they don't have any understanding of. They
Hmm.
were not involved in the creation. Again,
Hmm.
unlike the Norse gods and the Greek gods, the men and elves do not come from the Valar's music. They are a totally different thing, and the Valar don't understand them. That's kind of the point. It's like
Yes,
Aerys like, I'm gonna throw this sort of X factor in that you have no idea how to deal with, and you're just gonna have to adapt. And that is where they make their mistakes. But
but how
in a
can they not
sense, like, how could
understand?
they?
They're like thousands of years old. Like, look, Numenor, giving them Numenor. They've seen how men are. Men were not completely good in the first age. So many men betrayed elves, betrayed the Valar.
Yeah,
There are evil men. And just to say, oh, there were some good men, and let's give them an island. And if they
I don't.
multiply, they're just good men.
Yeah,
They gave them Numenor inside of the Undying Lands, fully knowing that, not fully knowing, but they,
yeah.
they should have known,
Well, see,
right?
I don't know if the Valar actually expected Numenor to last till the end of the world. And Numenor had a like if there hadn't been a Numenor,
Mhm.
and if it hadn't been able to receive, because the thing is the elves
They
and
couldn't
sometimes
have
even
helped later.
yeah, even the elves and the Maiar show up in Numenor. They're able to sail there
Mhm.
from Valinor. So
Yeah,
that pass, and that's what makes the Numenorians so great is that they're finally, poor men wake up. The
yeah.
Valar have already gone on lockdown because Morgoth is like kind of besieging the whole continent. So, understandable in
Yeah.
that case. And the Valar can't be there for men the way they were there for elves. So men
Mhm.
end up getting corrupted, and
Mhm.
some of them, manage to hold out, but their whole line is just destroyed. So you've got like
Mhm.
these like 5 people who are supposed to repopulate humanity, and
Mhm.
they've received some education from the elves, but they don't have anywhere near the amount of education that the elves themselves got from the Valar.
Mhm.
So the Valar they've got to rectify that if men are to persist, I think, because we know what happens
Mhm.
to the men who don't go to Numenor. They
Mhm.
do okay, but it's certainly not. And then it's out of Numenor that civilization does come to
Yeah.
humanity. Not bad. I'm not saying that I'm not pro Numenorian expansionism and imperialism.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the faithful who had,
Yeah. There are good
the
sides and
seeds of the
bad sides of
dignity.
colonization. Yeah.
Well, yeah, just like the refugees that came and they were like,
Mhm.
we are going to be the ones who rally everyone against Sauron. And we're going to
Yeah.
say that, we will stand against him, where I don't know that without the education and the
Yeah.
technological power and the knowledge that the Numenorians brought from the sinking of Numenor.
Yeah.
So basically, like, my problem with the Valar is that you can't really treat them like human characters. They're
No,
not,
I
or even like elven characters. Their agenda, and this is like a problem. Like it bugs me a little bit, because their priority is always going to be, we don't care so much about you humans and your individual fate and the
mm,
suffering that you're going to undergo, because all that's kind of a given. What we care about is 3,000 years down the line, will there still be, a civilization that can withstand Sauron, kind of a thing. And
I
that's really
I
kind of cold, but
the big picture. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I understand, but you have somebody like, Gandalf coming in, Ulurin,
Yes.
right? So he comes in the picture and he understands the nature of elves, he understands the nature of men, he understands the nature of hobbits, of everything, right?
Well,
Um, yeah, he does.
he does by the time we see him. I don't know what
Yeah,
his
because he's
learning
in
curve
Middle.
was like.
Yeah, and this is my point I want to make now, because he went to
Yeah.
Middle Earth,
Right.
and he went to Middle Earth and he learned. Yeah, because he wasn't in Middle Earth before, not that we know of. So
Mm-hmm.
his only knowledge is from watching from afar. Maybe that one stone, in
Yeah, the Palantir kind
Avalone.
of thing, or
Yeah, that maybe through that they saw, and then they had exchanges with Numenor and blah blah blah. So he
yeah.
he he knew
Well,
stuff,
and the
right?
big thing about Gandalf is that he doesn't want to go.
Yeah,
Manwë has to
yeah.
like twist his arm.
I know, but still, my point is,
Yeah.
he goes there, he understands, because the Valar, they are not. I don't understand how they literally shut themselves off and are
Mm-hmm.
like, and then just, yeah, but it is what you say. They just see the big picture. They're like, I don't need to be there for the baby steps, right?
Right.
I'm there for the big steps. And then when I see, okay, the whole thing is drowning, like God at the end, destruction
Yeah.
of the ring, then finally Ero intervenes, because he's like, okay, good. But
Yeah, well,
I'm
yeah.
not.
Arrow's like this is the moment that has been foretold, kind of a thing, and which
Yeah.
way is it gonna go?
Yeah. And obviously, the story would be boring if they would
That's
interfere.
the other thing.
I know, I know all that, but it's like you can't just see them as these perfect, they
No,
they don't do anything, because no, they could have done better. Yes, that would be a worse story for us, but they could have done better. That was
they
my point. So
yeah, they could have
God
done
didn't make them.
differently.
Yeah.
And it
So God didn't
seems
make them
like there are choices that they made that you could say, like, in retrospect, they shouldn't have made that choice. But the other
yes.
thing that I kind of enjoy is, and I agree with you, I think, again, it comes down to that loss of faith, that shutting themselves off,
Yeah.
why? Well, because if we don't, we're gonna get destroyed. Well, no, you're not. Like you know enough to know
No.
that
Yeah.
he outright told you anything bad that Melkor does, it's gonna backfire on him.
Hmm.
So if that's the framework that you're operating on, and it is something that the elves say and
Yeah.
that the Valar say a lot, if that's what
Yeah.
if that's really the framework you're operating on, then why do you have to be
Yeah.
so afraid and so, and again, like, we're applying our framework to fictional creatures who are
I know.
operating under a very different system. Like that's part of the thing about the Valar, is that they're meant to be a little bit weird and alien.
I know.
But
Yeah.
I think that reticence on their part, and this is the one of things where Tolkien did, he went into all this where he's like, okay, from a literary perspective, we can't have the Valar just coming in to solve every problem.
Yeah.
But he said also a lot of the things that we as humans, hearing about them from the elves, who themselves don't really understand all of what's going on, like, it's,
Yeah.
we might consider certain things, certain actions, like, don't make sense to us, or it seems obvious what the right choice would have been. But he says there, many of those choices were a lot trickier than they may appear. But he did say that the
Hmm.
one thing that he thought that maybe was a consistent problem that they had is this failure to trust in the plan. They tried to
Hmm.
control too much. They tried to
Yeah.
hang on too tight when they should have kind of let go. And this is what we see with, like, Ulmo, everyone's favorite Vala, is that he's one
No.
of the ones who persistently, I get a lot of people saying, like, Ulmo is best boy, Ulmo is bro, and
I know,
he's
but he's
one
so
who,
cool because he's close to the humans. He tries to understand them,
exactly,
and
exactly.
then Yeah,
He's the one
he
who's always
interferes.
he
Yeah.
doesn't think that the elves should be taken out of Middle Earth. He's one of the voices against that. He doesn't think that Melkor should
Mhm.
be released, or if he is, like, he shouldn't
Yeah.
be allowed to hang out with the elves.
Yeah.
And he is persistently the one who says, look, no, we need to engage with this. We can't just and I think a lot of that has to do
Yeah.
with the fact that he's the Vala of water. He's
Mhm.
the one who flows through, like, the literal
Yeah.
veins of the earth.
Yeah,
He
he's part
hears
of
the
it.
messages, so
Yeah.
he is part of it. And then you get this kind of thing with Yavanna. Also has some of this going on, with growing things and, like, nature. And she's like, yeah, my
Yeah.
trees are out there getting cut down. This kind of, this is going to cause some problems down the line, guys. We should probably do something.
Yeah.
So Ulmo, people like him because he is determined to keep engaging with and doing what he can to
Yeah.
mitigate, but also he doesn't
Yeah.
want to impose. It's always a choice with Ulmo. He doesn't force Turgon to build Gondolin, and he doesn't and
No.
indeed can't force him to leave when it's time.
But
All
he
he can.
seeds the trust and he shows an
Yes.
opportunity. And that is also what I
Yes.
don't like about the Valar, because they know they have the weapons to fight Melkor. They know he's afraid of Tulkas. Like, he's literally, if he would see Tulkas,
Mm-hmm.
he's gone, he's running. And he's also afraid of Varda, right?
Yeah.
Of the Queen of the Stars. He's afraid of her light. And they know and they see, because they see everything, they see that this light, is what even Morgoth's troops and Morgoth's minions are also afraid of. So they know what the weapons could be to destroy him. And Ulmo, it's all on poor Ulmo then, that
Pretty
then
much.
needs to find, yeah, no, but seriously, that then needs to find, okay, then I need to set up this guy, he needs to go there, he needs to wear this armor. It could all have been way easier. Um,
Yeah.
but again, then our story would be
It wouldn't
boring.
be a
I
good
understand.
story.
I understand all that. I'm
And
just
that's
saying.
the Valar's motivation too, is like the whole history of Arda is portrayed to them as a story. Like,
Yeah.
they also want a good story, and that's kind of like cold when you're the protagonist of the story and your name is Turin Turambar, but
And you marry your sister. Anyway, boom. Yeah. So no, I've okay. So Umo is Umo also your good boy, favorite boy,
I
or
like Ulmo. The thing that I like about Ulmo, I think, most, so he doesn't ever suffer from that lack of faith, and that's the thing with the Valar is,
yeah,
again, this is their fatal flaw. They could have opposed Morgoth, the
yeah,
thing, more openly. The thing that
yeah,
held them back was they were like, well, it's gonna rip the world apart. We worked so
yeah.
hard on it, and indeed it does. When they finally say, okay, we've got to do something at this point, or
I
it's
know,
the Noldor have made such a hash of this. We're gonna have to do something if there's
I
gonna even
know,
be a history to continue. And
I
also,
know.
like, cute little Eärendil, and he's brought us the Silmaril back, and um, so when they do intervene, Balerion crumbles into the ocean. Like, there
I
is
know.
no more Doriath, there's no more Gondolin, there's no more,
Yeah,
none of the peaks and the highlands.
yeah.
It's all gets drowned, and presumably, like, a lot of people die in that process or are,
I know, but is
homeless.
the
And
I know, but is the alternative to let Morgoth enslave the
well,
world fully?
exactly. And I think, part of their motivation in the beginning, when they did come to him and they fought him and they threw him in the dungeons, and then they stopped and they said, we don't want to do any more destruction, and they left the dungeons full of his servants, and they
Yeah,
left Middle Earth to its own devices, I guess, hoping that it would, the thing with the Valar is, if you want to fix the world, you've got to dig the evil out of it, and that's going to be a very painful and destructive
yeah,
process. And
yeah,
they
yeah,
shied away from that when they had their
yeah,
chance to do it.
yeah,
And again, it's like, so Ulmo is the one who doesn't do that. And this
yeah.
is why the ocean is kind of a scary thing, because Ulmo is willing to, like, purge the evil, even if it means, like,
I
knocking some
know.
cliffs down.
I know.
Um,
And they also saw, in the centuries before, the sun arose and the elves awoke and everything, they always they built the world, right?
mm-hmm.
And then Melkor came in and destroyed it. And then they rebuilt again. They had two lamps originally lighting the world. He came and destroyed them, right? So in a way, it was also a bit of, I think, frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And and they all were given tasks, right? And they wanted to fulfill these tasks, but then in came in Middle-earth, and then
Yeah.
came this guy and destroyed everything. So they went, this is a bit how I see it, they went to another land where they were like, okay, this is ours now. So now, so my task is to weave or have a beautiful garden or create trees or cry and then trees grow. You know, they all were given
Cry
their
and then trees
tasks,
grow.
right? I know.
Poor Naomi.
um, yeah. And they couldn't fulfill this task because he destroyed it all the time. And I
Yeah.
think that is also kind of annoying. And so they, you know, they did go to that land where they could fulfill and they could build, because they were supposed to be sub-creators and they wanted to create. Look at Aule, you just mentioned him.
Yeah.
He wanted to create. He wanted that to happen. So, but they did, and then it got destroyed. But that on that note, and I think that is one of the most beautiful things in Tolkien's creation myth and mythology, which I find, because I think only from, you know, bad things good things happen. I
Yeah.
do think because Melkor did create, you know, Melkor, so they, you know, they had these mountains built in Middle Earth, and then Melkor, you know, teared them down, and so something new came out of it, right? And I do think very often these things, then rebuilding things, making things better, that is first very human, very, you know, that is the way of the world. But I think that is a beautiful topic, actually. And then I do think you put more thought into it. You're like, okay, so how could these walls then stand? How could so, and then something really good is created, something thoughtful, something, not, you know, just putting it there, but you have to think about it again and again and rebuild it again.
Yeah.
And I like that that Middle Earth that then existed and came into being was really cool and different, and how it should be. It shouldn't be easy to create something.
And we see this is even in the Ainulindale when they're all kind of, you know, presumably this is before the start of time and they're all just sort of hanging out and doing their Ainu thing. And they're watching so Melkor has had his Discord, and this is the interesting thing. And this is suggested, so Nature of Middle-earth came out, and I think it's in there that there's this one like tiny little side note in one of the little excerpts of the essays that just like totally blew my mind. So you know, in the published Silmarillion and in general in most of Tolkien's writings, Melkor's discord is always portrayed as an act of evil, like total evil. You know, the discord is the source of evil. But there was this, Tolkien was kind of thinking aloud, so I'm not saying this is canon at all, but it just shows that this is something that he's sensitive to and aware of, that he would even kind of doodle this down on a, you know, the back of a receipt, the poor guy. Like he typically did, just like writing on whatever scrap of paper he could find and then losing it for years. He says that Melkor's, when he entered Arda, he still wasn't wholly evil. You know, in the Silmarillion version, we get that, you know, Eru sees into the heart of Melkor and is like, I know that you're full of BS, but I'm going to let you enter anyway because I know that you're going to make things interesting, basically. And Melkor's like, no, really, I'm sorry. Really, I want to help. Yeah, sure. Ooh, look over here. Volcanoes. So the idea is
like
that Melkor...
the other version better as well.
Yes, where he enters but part of this makes it into the published Silmarillion, where we have, again, Ulmo, our boy, who's like in charge of water, and water is this very fluid substance, and like that's kind of, you know, his name Ulmo means the pourer, so it's less about water and more like the idea of liquidity, whatever that is. And Ulmo has created like this water, and then Melkor creates fire and really, really cold things. And almost kind of put out about that because, like, it, you know, turned all of his water into steamy clouds and hard, solid ice. He's like, well, you know, the vapor is now Manwë's and the ice is now, like, Aule's stuff with the crystallization. Like, this sucks, man. He wrecked my Lego fort. And Eru, like the good parent, comes in and says, no, look, he made it better. You know, he knocked it down, but now you've got clouds and you can be with Manwë, and you can do rain and you can do snow and you can do beautiful ice crystals. All of this comes out of your idea, combined with Melkor kind of losing his ish for a second there and getting carried away. And I like the idea that Melkor doesn't become irredeemably evil until probably around when the elves show up and he's like, I will make you mine and I
Yeah,
don't care, like you're gonna be my orcs now. Whether
yeah.
or not that's actually how he did it, that's certainly what he wanted to do.
I fully agree. I do
Yes,
think
thank
that
you.
was the
This is why
moment.
we
No,
stand
no.
Melkor people.
Yes. No, I really do think that was the moment because he saw, because this is a very special creation and he knew they would come, but he didn't knew how they would be. And he always wanted to create. This is what we learn, right? And
Yeah.
then he saw this perfect creation because I do think, them, arising in Crivenon under the starlight. I do think this is a very powerful, perfect moment. And he was
Mhm.
like, wow, I can never do that. And I think he started really to hate grew in him.
Yes, this was his I have to have it and I see now that I can't,
Yeah,
so I'm gonna wreck it. You know,
yeah.
with the rest of the
I
Valar and the mountains and everything, he's like, I can do that too. And they're like, stop it. And he's like, no, really,
exactly.
this is gonna make it better. But
But
then he
they are
sees the
living,
elves,
breathing, thinking, speaking things, right? And
things that
he's
he
like,
can't even hope to approach,
yeah,
and that's his moment.
yeah.
And again, time gets weird because technically the Valar, again, you know
Mhm.
they presumably already know everything,
Yeah,
or most of everything when they
yeah,
enter the world, so
yeah.
presumably this seed exists in him from the beginning.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah, this
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 is the
is
crazy
in
thing of
time.
original sin, right? This is also very like, is it are some people born, like what is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So no,
And
I
that
agree.
impulse for creation, that curiosity, the desire to renew things and take them in a totally new direction. He has the
Yeah,
potential to be a great collaborator,
yeah,
and all of those good qualities. Again, in Tolkien there's no such thing as absolute evil. There's just the negation and corruption of good, and
yeah.
insofar as something exists and has power, that
Hmm.
power stems from what has to be a good impulse, and good
Hmm.
all ultimately derives from Eru. So Melkor's personality as such
Yeah,
is, the good traits of it, we have to assume, were given to him by Eru.
yeah.
And I know some people say that, Eru made more Melkor evil so that he could,
No,
create the. I don't buy into that. I can see the
no, me
argument for
neither.
it.
Yeah,
And I think that, part of the problem is you've got to give, Eru creates the Valar wanting them to be sub creators. To be
yeah,
a real sub creator, you have to have that sentience and free will.
yeah.
And that implies the ability to
To
choose
become,
something other
yeah,
than what is like good.
yeah,
So I mean, I think the potential is inborn in all of them, and we see that like with Aule or with Ulmo, the way that they argue and they say, "No,
yeah,
I think this is right. Well, I think you're wrong, and I'm going to do this instead." And sometimes you
yeah.
see that it seems to work better that way, and sometimes it's like, maybe you should have gone with the other guy's choice.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that my preference for, if we're looking at it in time and Melkor as a character, is that he was this Loki figure for the longest time. He
Yeah,
was the guy messing up the brothers' Legos, and finally they shut him out of their room.
yeah.
And
But that was still all not so bad that you
right,
should be
there wasn't
banished and
anything evil about that
yeah,
necessarily.
yeah,
It was just inconvenient.
yeah.
But the thing that turned was when he set his sights on the
Yes.
children of Eru, and he wanted to control them and pervert them at all
Mhm.
costs, because he just could not cope with the idea that there was
Yeah,
something that existed outside of his
yeah,
power to replicate, basically.
yeah. Oh,
Oh my
I
gosh, so many
fully
Melkor words.
fully agree, but we still love him.
We do.
Um, do you a, a question? Do you so they were merciful? We talked about this, right? They were merciful and they released him, and there was a big discussion,
Yeah.
in one of my favorite words in Tolkien's mythology is the Mahanaxar,
Love
the
Mahanaxar.
ring of doom.
So
Like,
good.
please visualize that one day. And oh, isn't it on like some band's cover? Didn't they portray the, or is that just fan art? Maybe it's art, whatever. But I saw it portrayed a few times and it's really,
Mm.
really cool.
Yeah, we need, by
Um
the way, fan artists and people who know fan artists, we need more Mahanaxar, because that comes up a
Yes.
lot when I'm trying to, source really cute images or just even like envision what Valinor would
Yeah.
have looked like. And there is not nearly enough of like
No.
Valmar and Taniquetil and like
No.
all these beautiful. So underserved need. Somebody get on that, please.
Give
Please and thank
us.
you. I
Yes.
draw stick figures, so I can't
Yeah.
really help.
Because yeah, exactly. Because Lexi and I speak for myself. My mother's an arts professor, and I'm like, I can't paint for the love of God. Like anyway. But you can argue if some of the artists these days can paint. Anyway, another topic. But yeah. So, do you think they would be? Could they learn anything? Will they ever be, in the course of the years and centuries, would they ever be merciful again? Would they,
Ooh.
what would happen if, he would, I don't know, because we don't know how the story, we know, okay, fourth age, and then it cuts, and then
Mm-hmm.
yes, there is a Dagorach, but that is again no longer canon-ish, so it's like the doomsday in the Bible, but it's not really canon. So would they forgive him again? Because who spoke for him? Was it Yenna spoke
Nienna
for him.
is
Yeah.
the big one. A couple other, and Aule too comes through for him a little bit, and he's like, well, he wanted to make something. The guy made a mistake.
Yeah.
I made a mistake, and now we have dwarves out of my mistake because I
Yeah.
like repented. So give him the chance to do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has people speaking for him, but also speaking
Yeah.
for the concept of mercy generally. I think the idea that, look, we promised him that if he served his time, we would let
Yeah.
him go. And if we go back on that, what does that say about us, kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Let's do the thing where we trust that there's going to be a plan and take the risk, even though we know that it's a risk, and it sure is a risk.
Yeah.
So I have a very heterodox idea of what the end of Arda could look like, because we know that we don't know, but Finrod thinks, and I trust Finrod, that there's supposed to be this renewal where the old world kind of, so there's the difference between Arda Unmarred, Arda Marred, and Arda Healed. So,
Yeah.
Arda Unmarred being the perfect state before anything evil happens,
Yeah.
Arda Marred being Arda with the evil. But
Tainted.
then the argument that the evil actually, like you said, everything from the mountains being kind of jaggedy, but look, that's, beautiful in a way that we didn't expect, down to like, well, Feanor has rebelled and it's going to be like horrible suffering and sadness, but like Fingolfin's charge and, Beren and Luthien, like the sadness makes the story better, and more inspiring. So Arda Healed is this idea that out of the bad things that happened is gonna come something that is, like the snowflakes, totally new and better than it would have been without without anything bad happening and everything just going, quote, according to plan all along. And then you have to ask, well, then was that actually Arrow's actual plan? But
The
we'll
plan
get into that.
all
Like
along.
that's way above my pay grade. So
But is
I
that
think
the return? Is that his return?
I think at the end, Morgoth returns and Sauron
Yeah.
returns, because this is the Daggerath, and then Turin comes down to slay them. I think when Turin slays Morgoth,
Yeah.
it's just that he's slaying Morgoth, and what is left is Melkor. And then I don't know if it would be an instantaneous process or if it would be something that would take like a while, but I think then Melkor, and again, based on themes that Tolkien references, but
So he's
definitely
redeemed. So you
not
think
Tolkienian. I think that the way the story should end, the way that makes sense for it to end, given all of these themes that we've been talking about, is Melkor emerges, and then he takes on the role again of the necessary trickster, redemptor, kind of contrarian. He's the guy who sticks up to Manwë and says, no, you can't do that. That's boring, brah. And Manwë's like, but it's worked for thousands and thousands of years, and it worked in the old world. And Melkor's like, nah, brah, we're going a totally different direction. Me and Feanor, we're tight now, and we're gonna Silmarils for everyone.
okay.
So this is what I think. I think Turin slays Morgoth, he slays the evil. And what's left is the potential for but that is me being a total Melkor stan and just not
That
wanting
would be
the story to end with
that
like
would be
this
on unmarred then, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Melkor unmarred because they've removed the Morgoth
Yeah.
element, which is really at that point sort of an elemental force. It's his evil unleashed in the world. It's his corruption. You
Mm,
slay the corruption. If there is anything at all left of the original personality, that's
yeah.
you know that when they have this like mess of Arda and they're like, well, we need to
Mhm.
totally flip this on its head and make something totally new and different and even better than before. Like,
Yeah.
who is the Vala of that? Well, it should have been Velcor.
Yeah.
But that's again, that's
It's I've never
so
heard
so
that.
heterodox.
I never, yeah, I never had that idea. I'm a very black and white person, good versus evil. I want that. I think that is a continuous circle, and I want it to continue. So maybe my version then would be Turin Turamba becomes, because he is evil, becomes the new Dark Lord. So
Well, he's
because we.
definitely very damaged.
And he rallies Meglin, Eol, all these people around him anyway. So I think
Yeah.
we come to the conclusion we like the Valar. They're not they're not, they did wrong as well. They're not guiltless, they are not perfect, and I that is a good thing, actually.
Yeah.
That makes them less boring, but they're not as interesting, sadly, as the Greek gods. I would have preferred that because it would make the story a bit more spicier, but then again, do we
You
need
don't
that? We have.
you don't think Nessa doing a striptease for Tulkas on their wedding night is
Oh, 100%. She did. I mean,
we
she's
need
a.
that's not spicy enough. We need more of that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a flash dance thingy. No, but yeah. So I think they're very interesting. We don't know a lot about them, especially in the later centuries. It's the focus is more elves and then men, and that is okay. I don't
Yeah.
need to
Well, they
know
kind of
everything.
they kind of get stuck in this position where they're like, we kind of have to let them take over now. It's their
Yeah.
party.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, people ask in the comment questions if if you want to know more, if you have different ideas for these kind of topics, and I always try to answer the questions there. And yeah, I really liked this discussion. Lexi and I will find more topics. Maybe
Yeah,
we'll
we
do
didn't
elf.
even
And
we could probably spend another hour on the Maiar alone.
yes, maybe we should do that we can do that on your channel or whatever.
Yes.
But yeah, we hope you enjoyed this. It was always it is always it is always fabulous to have you here, Lexi, and thank you so much for coming on. We hope you guys enjoyed this, and my favorite is always Melkor, obviously. Take that, girl, in the comment section.
Yes, wherever you are. We're sorry. We're sorry that we find fictional characters intriguing when they have flaws.
Yeah.
Yes, no. Thank you for having me on. I was super excited when you got in touch with me again, and I was like, "All right, we're down for another." I don't know how long it's going to be, but I definitely have thoughts on the Valar, so this is going to be a good conversation. I think it was.
Let us talk. So, thank you so much, Lexi. Everyone, thank you for staying on, and bye bye. Till the next one. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.